piece of me?
Do I feel lucky? Well, do you, punk?
Good morning, Vietnam! I love the smell of napalm in the morning.
You're gonna need a bigger boat.
I feel the need for speed.
I wish I knew how to quit you.
Love means never having to say you're sorry.
You do. You'll shoot your eye out, kid.
What's up, film fans? It's Monday, and it's a brand new episode of the Cine-Men Movie Podcast. I'm your host, Juan, and I am joined by the cast, the crew. Zach?
Hey, what's up, guys?
Craig?
What's poppin'?
Hallelujah, another Monday and another Nicolas Cage movie, back-to-back weeks of Nick Cage. I'm excited. We're talking Face Off today. We're also bringing back the top 5 after a week of absence. You got some people joining in here, so I'm excited. Nicolas Cage. It is finally time. We're going to talk Face Off. It's a movie that I've been wanting to talk about for a long, long time. Directed by John Woo. And before we get into the movie today, let's take a look back. Last week, guys, we talked about the unbearable weight of massive talent. Pedro Pascal, Nicolas Cage. If you have not seen it, go back and check it out. Fun episode. Nice conversation that me and Craig and Edward had. So go back and check it out. Anywhere you listen to podcasts. If you want to find any of our links to the show, it is all on the Facebook page, facebook.com/the Cine-Men Movie Podcast, the Instagram /Cine-Men Movie Podcast, the Twitter is Cine-Men405, and then you can email us at cinemen921@gmail.com. But before we get in to today's episode, guys, how was the weekend? Craig, I want to start with you because last week I talked to you about the OU Red and White game. Did you get to go to it?
I didn't go to it. Had a baby shower over the weekend, so different duties that were needed to be done. So stayed home, watched it. I enjoyed it. Football's back for a little bit.
Did I see that score though? Was that a basketball score? Was it like in the 80s?
No. So Venables came up with a different kind of scoring because he's trying to. He notices all their hard work and he's like, in order for people to kind of see and reap the benefits of all the hard work, they implemented a different scoring style. So you get a pass breakup, you get a couple points on defense, you get a sack, you get a couple points on defense, you hold them to a punt, et cetera, et cetera. Offense, the same thing. You get a first down, so it was just kind of like a scoring system for a spring game where it's like, you've put in all this hard work. We're going to give you points for that hard work that you're able to put in and give you something to show for it.
Is that something a lot of other teams do, or is that just something that Oklahoma started doing?
They came up with that on a Thursday before the spring game.
Right before the spring game.
Yeah.
That's crazy. So Craig, busy weekend. Zach, what about you? What kind of weekend did you have?
It was kind of laid back, honestly. I'm sure you guys may or may not know I'm having just some knee surgery at the end of May, so I'm just trying to get some things taken care of before I'm down for a couple of weeks. Other than that, it was pretty much laid back.
You got to get a Nintendo Switch.
Yeah, because after seeing Super Mario, I'm kind of in the mood to play some Super Mario now.
Is it insane that we were almost halfway done with the year?
Jesus, dude.
April came and gone. This is officially the last episode of April, and then it's on to May. And man,
once you're done with May, it's over.
Yeah,
because then it's summertime. You roll right into football. Football is going to go by faster than
because it's crazy. We got Indiana Jones that we're going to be talking about at the end of June. We got Tom Cruise and Mission Impossible. We got The Flash.
Got Guardians in a couple weeks.
Guardians in 2 weeks. 2 weeks from today, we're going to be talking about Guardians Volume 3. And early reviews are out. And some of the early reviews are reading that it's the best Marvel movie since Endgame. Some of the other reviews are saying that it's a tearful joy because it's so sad. There's 2 post-credit scenes. So I think it's going to be good. This is the first movie kicking off Phase 5, though, right?
I think it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, Speaking of that, guys, we're not gonna wait around any longer. It's time to get into today's top
Top
5.
5.
We are talking our top 5 Nicolas Cage movies. It has been a fun week, fun few weeks of just diving in and talking Nick Cage. I think we definitely have to pick up some more movies from him later on in the year. But for now, let's get into it. Zach, do you have any honorable mentions or anybody else?
Yeah, I'm gonna say Wind Talkers, Drive Angry, and my official honorable mention is Next, the one with Jessica Biel and Julianne Moore.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that movie. I'm gonna say Willy's Wonderland, Snake Eyes, and The Sorcerer's Apprentice, and the National Treasure movies.
Yeah, I'm gonna kind of piggyback off of you. National Treasure movies. And then since he's not really the main voice, I'm gonna say Into the Spider-Verse. So
All right, and guys, if you want to share your honorable mentions or your top 5 Nick Cage movies, hit us up on the social medias. You guys can email us and hit us up right there, like we talked about at the beginning of the episode. But Zach, let's start with you. Number 5.
Number 5 for me as his brand new movie, Renfield. Saw it last week or when it debuted. The movie overall, I'd probably give it a 7, but Nicolas Cage as Dracula, you would never think in a million years would work, but it just he just brings his own. It brings his own style, and he's definitely the best part of the film. And I was like, and they did a really good job of not doing like too much of him, just using him in the exact moments. And yeah, it was a really fun fever dream of a movie. So number 5 is Renfield.
We'll probably talk about it when it hits Blu-ray, but I'm going to ask you now. It didn't make any money at the box office. Do you think it gets a sequel?
No.
That's a shame.
Unfortunately.
Number 5 for me is going to be World Trade Center from 2006. The movie just 5 years after the impact of 9/11 hit. I think the movie was probably a little too soon, but Nicolas Cage is definitely a joy in that movie, and he definitely brings he plays a New Yorker very, very well. I'll say it that way. And for me, I'm gonna spoiler alert. The movie where he won an Oscar, Leaving Las Vegas, is not on my list because I've never seen it. I'm on the hunt for it. Been on the hunt for it, but just a heads up, it's not on my list. So
hitting the vintage stock Blu-ray shelves, trying to find it.
But yeah, number 5 for me is going to be World Trade Center. Craig, what about you?
Short and sweet. Number 5 for me is going to be the first Ghost Rider. I think he plays a badass Ghost Rider. Not part of the MCU, but I think that a revival from him would probably be pretty solid in the MCU. So,
Zach, number 4.
Jumping right off of you, Craig. Number 4 is Ghost Rider. Probably one of the better, I guess, non-MCU films that they probably made. There's a little bit of caginess to the role, but I think it's expected, especially what that character is. I remember, I haven't seen it in forever, but I just remember I saw it in the theater, and I just remember it being really fun and enjoyable, and still had a little. It was trying to be a superhero movie, but still have a lot horror elements in it, and yeah. I think that's where it succeeded the most. So
I forgot. I've watched it over the weekend. I completely forgot that the man Sam Elliott's in that movie.
Oh yeah,
he's the
cowboy.
Yeah.
Number 4 for me is going to be Joe from 2013. He plays kind of an ex-con with the past kind of catches up with him a little bit, but watched it for the first time over the last few weeks, and It is. I like that word that you brought up, Zach. Very caginess, but he
Mhm.
delivers, and he has a brilliant role, and I highly recommend that movie. So number 4 for me is going to be Joe from 2013.
Number 4 for me is going to be the movie we're talking about today, Face Off.
Are you having fun yet, Craig?
I don't. Yeah, I mean, I'm with you guys.
I should have pronounced it different. In Face Off, he's like, "You don't look like you're having any fun."
Yeah, that's what I was. I thought you were going that route, but I wasn't sure, so I was like, all right.
Zach, number 3.
Number 3 is one that I think it's probably his most underrated film in the terms of what he's done. Probably the last. I think this movie came out in 2009. I think 2010, something like that. Number 3 is Knowing. The one where he's like trying to prevent like the the end of the world from happening with a list of numbers that he got from his son. Really enjoyed it. I think it's a really fun, basically a countdown to the apocalypse in a certain way. Really, I just remember like seeing. I saw that in the theater. I just remember seeing like the plane crash sequence, and I was like, wow, that's actually really well done for it to be just like a little kind of a low budget type thriller type film.
It feels M. Night Shyamalan.
Yeah, it really does. So yeah, very deserving to be on the list. So that's number 3.
Number 3 for me is going to be a tie between Adaptation and Moonstruck. So if you have not seen Adaptation, it's a pretty. It's not for everybody, but it's one of those movies where he's pretty much a drunk screenwriter. And then Moonstruck, he's a one-armed man who falls in love with Cher, and it's a funny comedy, and it's got 80s romantic comedies just splattered all over it. So number 3 is a tie between Adaptation and Moonstruck for me. Craig, number 3.
Number 3 for me is going to be the Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent. I really enjoy that movie for some reason. Just the fact that Nick Cage is playing himself, and you see all these other actors that aren't themselves. I think the story of it was really good. The acting, the chemistry. I say the acting; it was very Cage-ish. But yeah, it was one that it's grown on me so far. So,
Zach, number 2.
Number 2, I think number 2 is going to be Pig. I think it's probably his best performance that he's done in quite some time, and for it to be just a little, I want to say maybe it's not even a $2 million budget film.
Yeah,
it has a lot of like thematical themes about just like loss and just trying to find your place in the world. And I mean, I think the biggest thing, if you go in thinking this is John Wick with a pig, you're going to be very disappointed. Just go in expecting just like a little drama, and I think you would really enjoy it. Like I said, Nicolas Cage is phenomenal in it. It's kind of an insult that he didn't get any recognition for that role, because I sent you guys the link of the 60 Minutes interview that he did last night, and he says that was his favorite film he's done in quite some time. So, and I agree with that. So
that was his Uncut Gems.
It was, yes. So yeah, number 2 is Pig.
I won't spend too much time on it because we're talking about it today. We're talking Face Off. Number 2 for me is Face Off. Craig, what about you?
Number 2 for me, Zach, I agree with you. I think it's one of his lesser known, not lesser known, but underrated. Knowing. Watched it at church one time when we were doing a kind of like a lock-in retreat or whatever.
Nicolas Cage at church. That's the kind of church I need to go to.
No, I mean,
hell yeah.
But I mean, you look at it. He was also in Left Behind, which is very biblical. Yeah. I feel like it may be one of those things where he just takes any role that he feels like is a good story. But even though Left Behind wasn't ideally the best acted movie I've seen, it still holds some weight when you watch it. Same thing with Knowing. It holds weight when you watch it. It pulls you in from start to finish, and it's just a movie that every time I watch it, it's a movie that really pulls me in, and I enjoy it. So that's my number 2.
Number 1, Zach.
Number 1, you both had in your honorable mentions. probably my favorite Nicolas Cage movie overall is National Treasure. The first one, I also like Book of Secrets as well, but the first one was just so, it was just such a, I mean, you could call it Indiana Jones with Nicolas Cage in a sense. But it was just a fun film, and I don't understand. The first one was good. The second one was pretty cool. I'm waiting on the third one. Obviously, I don't know if that's really going to happen, since I don't know if you guys saw the Disney Plus series was canceled yesterday.
Yeah.
Which, I mean,
they said his cameo was cut before it
was
filming. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's going to happen.
But yeah, those are fun movies. Check them out on Disney Plus and Disney. National Treasure 3, $1 billion idea. Just go for it. So that's my number one.
I'm pretty sure with how popular Nick Cage has gotten in the last few years, I'm sure
they'll figure something out.
Yeah, they both could use each other.
And maybe that's why they did cut that, because they were like, you know what, we don't need a spinoff. We need Nick Cage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Zach, did you get to rewatch those National Treasure movies before today?
Not today. I rewatched them a couple months ago, and they still hold up. They're still really, really fun movies.
I watched the first one for the first time in a long time over the weekend, and it was fun. I didn't get to watch the second one, but hopefully I get to watch it soon. Number one for me is going to be Pig. I was blown away by that movie the first time I seen it. Blown away. And I was entertained from start to finish, and I've watched it twice since then. And it is to me one of his performances that he probably should have got more recognition for
watch it this weekend.
Over the last probably 15 years. So, and you know what? Before I watched Pig in 2021, Face Off was number one for me. So,
wow.
Craig, what about you? What's number one?
Number one for me is going to be Gone in 60 Seconds. That's just it's. Con Air is the movie that everybody kind of talks about when they talk about Nick Cage. To me, it's Gone in 60 Seconds. I mean, Angelina Jolie, Timothy Olyphant, Nick Cage, obviously.
I rewatched that over the week. That was the Fast and the Furious before the Fast and the Furious came out.
Yeah.
That's the way those movies should have went.
It was the cars, especially Eleanor, like you said, it was the Fast and Furious before Fast and Furious. It was definitely a hit for the 90s, or I think it came out in the 2000. So yeah, that's my number one.
Nice.
When I hear Nick Cage, that's the movie I think of.
Yeah, I would agree. My number one is, like, when I think of Nicolas Cage, that National Treasure just comes to mind. So
yeah, guys, well, let's get into it. Today we're talking all about Face Off. IMDb has it at 7.3. Rotten Tomatoes is at 92%. The Metascore is at 82%, while the Google users have it at 85%. It came out June 27th, 1997, with a budget of $80 million. It grossed a little over $246 million at the box office. To foil a terrorist plot, an FBI agent goes under facial transplant surgery to assume the identity of criminal mastermind who murdered his only son, but the criminal wakes up prematurely and seeks revenge. Starring John Travolta, Nicolas Cage, Joan Allen, Gina Gershon, Alessandro Nivolia, and directed by John Woo. And let's get started because I'm not having any fun yet. Craig, I want to start with you. Like you said last week, I brought up the church scene to you where he's, having fun, twirling his head in the convention center. He's dressed like a priest. And first time watch over the week, man. What'd you think?
Initially, I was dreading the start of this movie. But then once it started getting going, I was like, okay. So when this movie first came out, I'm almost sure, like, whenever people were like, oh, that's where this is going, it probably hit them like the Sixth Sense. But to me, like, when they were like, oh, you can go undercover as blah, blah, blah to the prison, I was like, oh, okay, this is where we're going. So I was hooked from that point on. So for like 30 minutes in, I was hooked. I was intrigued. I love the fact that it almost flipped the entire script of what you thought it was going to be upside its head, because at some point you were rooting for Pollux Troy, which was Sean Archer, and like it's like you wanted the bad guys to be good because you knew the good guys weren't doing what was right. So it was very emotionally turntable, and you just weren't sure which way you were rooting for. But yeah, it was a fun watch.
I'll keep mine short and sweet so we can get to Zach. I grew up on this movie. This is Nick Cage to me throughout the entire film. His eyes getting wide. He's completely cartoonish in this movie. The action is fun. It's unhinged, but it's just completely. It's Nick Cage's at its best. And then we'll get into it. Zach, what about you? First initial watch. What'd you think after the movie?
Yeah, this was my first watch. I gotta say, doing this podcast, I will say it's opened my eyes to a lot of just films that I really was proud of myself that I had not seen Face Off until I was 31 years old. And so the fact that we finally did this movie, I was just like, all right, fine. You want to do it. Let's talk about it. And I got to say, I enjoyed it. I didn't think I would. But I was just like, all right.
But like the feel to the movie was very old school action. And like it was, when I was watching it, I was like, this is what I remember old school action movies being. And
yeah,
for me to kind of be able to go back in the past and watch a movie for the first time where it was very action driven, all the explosions were real, everything was
practical.
The stunts, I know I'm kind of jumping ahead. The stunt people on the boats, when they're crashing those boats at the end, I was just like this. I mean, movie was.
It was very the action in this. I mean, and this is really not an insult. It was very Michael Bay-ish, where it was just like, wow, they actually put time and effort in to make it look as real as they could.
Yeah.
The airplane tarmac sequence, which is basically the original Fast and Furious 6 airplane sequence, where it's like, oh, so it's just going to keep going and crash into the hangar. It's just like there was one scene in particular where I was just like, oh my God, you could actually see like the wire dragging that stuntman across the room.
Yeah.
But I mean, I agree with you, Craig. It is definitely, this is what, growing up in the 90s, this is the type of stuff that I remember. Is like, looking back on it now, is it really good? I don't know. I mean, it's up for debate, but I mean, it was definitely those were action movies of the time. And this definitely is like the representation of it.
And like in the whole, I was kind of like, man, this movie's a little bit longer than I thought it was going to be. It sits at like 2 hours and almost 2:20.
Yeah, it felt long.
But when I'm sitting there watching it, I'm like, okay, it's an action thriller. It's kind of sci-fi-ish. It's got some thriller sequences in it. It's comedy. It's comedy. It's a prison break movie. It's a face swap. So there's really like every single aspect of the film John Travolta has to go through, Nick Cage has to go through, and it starts off at the beginning with Nicolas Cage and that weird looking mustache shooting John Travolta, kills the kid. What'd you think of just that opening scene, and then going into the airplane capture scene where he finally gets Castor Troy?
Yeah, I mean, that's just something that you never want to happen. It's like, if you want to kill me, but don't.
Nobody likes seeing kids die in movies,
right? Except for Ed. And it was kind of like, oh, like you just kind of ball your fist and you're like, oh, off the bat, like that's where we're going with it. And then,
and the crazy thing is you can't. That was definitely something of the 80s and 90s that you can get away with today, like doing that type of sequence. I don't think you can get away with that today in today's world.
Not the way they did it. No, it would have to be different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like John Travolta's Archer character, like the obsession, like it's been what did it say, it was like 6 years since his son's death, and this is all he's been like he's just trying to get Castor this entire time. And I like how even during the escape sequence on the plane, Castor's like, oh, here comes Archer. Like he knows that this is the person that's been after him this whole time. And so I thought that this is actually a better movie than the Tom and Jerry remake. So what is that going to say?
What's the detail work that goes into this movie, for those of you that just, say you're watching this podcast and you're like, oh, I've never seen it. It's a 90s, looks like a cheesy 90s action movie. There's so much more detail in a movie like this than you think would not be. Yeah. Going all the way down to, I know I'm skipping ahead, but like later on in the movie, they presented John Travolta with like a bottle of champagne, and they're like, hey, congratulations, this got sent by, and he picks it up and he's still bitter because he's like, yeah, I captured him, but look at how many people the team had to lose before we captured this guy. And then some of the detailed scenes, like when he remembers Pollux's medicine in the prison scene. He's like, I had to hand feed you the medicine. I remember all those pills. That's kind of some things that you don't think about when you're watching a movie like this. Like, man, it's easy to swap faces and put him in his body and him in his situation, but the director and the writers put those small sequences in of them remembering.
Well, and I think that adds to Archer's character because it shows just how obsessed he was with Troy. Yeah. And it works. The face swap works because he is so obsessive with them. And like they said at the beginning, they're when they're talking to him about it, they're like, "You're the only person that can do this because you're the only one that's been eat, sleep, and breathing Troy Pollux." Troy. Did they do that on purpose? Why it's backwards? Is that like because they're FBI agents? They do the last name first or something?
Yeah.
I don't know, but this movie worked. Even though I knew initially, I was like, he's going to face swap.
Yeah, he's
going to come back somehow, and he's going to get his face, or he's going to get locked in there. Like they're going to frame him for something that Troy Pollux did, and it just worked. Even though I knew pretty much what the plot was.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, I like how, when he gets back into prison and people are picking on him and they're like, what's up with this guy? He's like, oh, you slept with his wife. It's like, well, I don't remember. He's like making stuff up. He's like, I was in a coma. You have to, the little details that he wouldn't have found out no matter how obsessed he was with them, he was able to figure out a way to get it.
Yeah.
And, it was just, I thoroughly enjoyed it, every bit of it.
Well, and I think that the dialogue in this movie, well, it is very 90s cliche. I think it takes care of a lot of just like the fine details. Like when they actually do the transplant of the faces, it's just like, oh yeah, these are like high-powered lasers that could just heal the scars, and it just takes care of everything. It's just like, okay,
When you were talking about the dialogue, I thought you were going to talk about, could you eat a peach for hours, Zach?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, back in that time, we didn't know what technology was going to be like.
Yeah.
10, 15 years because of how fast it was accelerating. So the thought of that laser being able to do that and the 3D scanning and printing, which we do have 3D printing now, but to that level, we were a bit off. But the thought process of coming up with the ideas for that, I mean, it's genius, honestly.
Well, the funny thing is, this movie really went through developmental hell when it was being made. John Woo, he's very much a character-driven director when he's making movies, and I think that really shows through in this. Some of it is a little, dramedy,
cliche.
Yeah, cliche. But the funny thing is like this was originally supposed to be set like in a futuristic science fiction planet type thing, which you can kind of see the bare bones of that when he's like in the prison and he's wearing like the metal boots that only makes him walk in certain ways. But John Travolta and Nicolas Cage were not the original actors to be cast in this trio or this duo. So originally it was going to be Stallone and Schwarzenegger, and then
which they got their own Prison Break movie.
Yeah, truly. Like when Nicolas Cage gets up to out of the prison, and it's realized it's like a oil rig in the middle of the ocean. I was like, oh, so this is escape plan. A certain way, did they copy that in a way? And then I think it was Michael Douglas and Harrison Ford, because he was a producer on this movie. And then I think at one point it was Bruce Willis and Adam Baldwin. No.
Bruce Willis, I think, would have worked.
Bruce Willis would have worked. Alex Baldwin. I'm sorry, Alex Baldwin.
I think Bruce Willis and Keanu.
Yeah,
whoa. I mean, they were both action. But when Archer flips that switch in the prison, and he's like, I was just like that's so funny. Like
you kind of get like a little your stomach kind of churns a little bit when Nicolas Cage is looking up and he sees John Travolta for the first time. Like, whoa, you're not supposed to be here.
Yeah.
And then the three people who know that he's in that situation have been killed.
Yeah.
Which I thought was, you see it coming.
Yeah.
Yeah. But that's the thing. I think this movie, it doesn't make you think like, oh, you could easily pick up the strings of this and it would just immediately fall apart. But you just don't do it. You're just like, okay, he killed off the three people that knew that John Travolta's in that situation, but how is he going to get himself out of it? It's just like it just takes care of it for you, I guess, in a way.
I guess there are some strings that you could pick out to make it unravel, but like they said, it's off the books. There was nobody approved this mission. It was just those three and Archer that agreed to it. I don't think he really didn't tell his wife what was going on. He didn't tell anybody else what was going on. So theoretically, if you were to kill those three, and if the surgery was as seamless as they made it sound, and as realistic as they were made to make it look, like there really wasn't any way for him to disprove it. I did think, however, whenever he was going to the electrical chair, I didn't think it was to escape. I thought he was going to use it to blow that microchip so that he could start talking like Archer and try to get out that way. But there, of course, it's an action movie, so they did it the guns blazing way.
What was more fun, Nick Cage being Castor Troy, like the original Castor Troy, or John Travolta being Castor Troy? What did you guys enjoy seeing more?
I think Nicolas Cage as Castor Troy works better because there are times when John Travolta, it's just really, I mean, you can clearly tell that John Travolta is doing what Nicolas Cage would do in those situations. It's just kind of cringy a little bit, and it doesn't really work in certain scenes.
Like when John Travolta got the cigarettes and was like, "Papa's got a brand new bag," I was like, that didn't work.
Yeah,
but I enjoyed seeing Nick Cage.
Yeah, he was able to pull it off really well.
Oh yeah. Nick Cage is man.
No, when John Travolta was doing that whole spiel, acting as Troy Pollux as John Travolta, I got Be Cool vibes. Because he's like trying to be smooth and all kinds of stuff, and it just, like you said, John Travolta in that day and age didn't work out as like the smooth cool cat. Like in Grease, yes, it worked, but his body, his persona, his style just doesn't work like that in the 2000s, which it did. It made it kind of cringe, but it was funny because you knew it was him trying to act as if he was Nick Cage, so that made it funny.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the relationship with the brother. What did you guys think? Starting from the beginning when Nick Cage bends down and ties his shoe. What did you guys think of Alessandro playing Pollock?
I wish him and Travolta as Nick Cage had more interaction. Like when he's actually inside the prison, I felt like it was a very quick turnaround for him to get out of the prison.
Yeah.
I was kind of
And
the
I could
opposite. Go ahead.
no, I couldn't tell if the actor would like I couldn't
You
tell if the
couldn't.
actor was trying to like if is he trying to be just like a little autistic or something like that. It really like you could tell that he was like quote unquote the smart brother, but you could tell that there was something wrong with him, but like you couldn't
Yeah.
really like put your finger on it.
Yeah, and like you said, I don't know if it was his characteristics or if the way the guy was acting, but I couldn't tell if he knew. Like I knew at the beginning he could tell that something was off and indifferent, but it was just like he didn't trust him till he did trust him till he immediately was out of prison. Like it was just too quick of a turnaround to make you think anything different.
Yeah.
I get that because like at first you're like in the prison fight scene where he's beating up the big dude. You know, he's leery. He's like that's not Castor because
Yeah.
he's getting his ass kicked.
Yeah.
And then he turns around and tells him, "Oh, the LA Convention Center is gonna have to work." Like so, I get that point. Like there's some nitpicks about this movie. And at first, when I first started falling in love with this movie, the brother was the negative point in the movie for me because I'm like, is he too handicapped? Is he trying to be too handicapped? But yet he's the one who
It's like
came
Rain
up with
Man,
right. But he's the one who came up with the
plan,
plans
the
and
device.
the device. But this
Yeah.
time around, I thought he was kind of
I
Paul.
don't think he was
I thought
used
he was
enough.
exactly.
Yeah.
I was gonna
Yeah.
say I feel like he's Paul Dano-ish
Yeah.
in this role.
Yeah.
If they would have utilized him a little bit more and made him kind of just really show where they had him on that kind of crazy radar,
And
because you knew he was kind of. I mean, look at Nick Cage's character; he's crazy, so you know that he's on that spectrum somewhere.
And he's a great actor. We don't. I mean, he's in some other movies that we haven't talked about him enough. But he's in some movies like American Hustle. His recent movie is The Many Saints of Newark. He was in. So if you guys want to check him out in that, go check it out on HBO Max. John Travolta, man. I know this was a whole Nick Cage top 5 and a Nick Cage past few weeks, but I don't think John Travolta gets a lot of credit for this role. Maybe it's because he was outshined by Nick Cage, but John Travolta for a little bit, guys. What do you think?
It ended up being a John Travolta movie,
right?
Like he was the main storyline. Nick Cage just takes it.
It's the opposite.
Yeah.
John Travolta came in a mega movie star. Nick Cage came in a star, and then they both left the movie. Nick Cage became the mega star. John Travolta started fading off in the sunset.
Yeah.
So they both kind of swapped roles, literally in the movie and outside in Hollywood.
Ironically enough.
Look at you. Look at just Johnny was like, "It's there for the picking. I'm taking it."
Just because like stuff after this, Nick Cage just like started becoming more and more just impactful in everything that he did. What'd you guys think of the interrogation scene? You know, John Travolta's going through everything he can before he has to do the face swap. He brings in some of the thugs. One of the dudes shits his pants. And John Travolta sounds like he's legit trying to not to bust out into laughing. You know, the other dude talks about his dead son. He puts a gun to his head. And then Gina, who plays Sasha, Nicolas Cage's ex-girlfriend in the movie. What do you guys think of the interrogation sequences?
I feel like
Too much?
No, it was just like it didn't feel like they were good enough interrogations. You know what I mean? It's like they just threw it in there because it is a quote unquote.
They didn't want you to think, oh, I have no other choice. I have to do the face-off lift.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and it was like I kind of agree with you, Craig. It was like we have to do it just because we have to do it. There's really no.
He has to do the interrogations. We have to find out the information.
Exactly.
Even though he'd been following Pollock's Joy for so long, he probably knew everything about that already. So they probably could have pieced it and worded it in that way. But like you said, they had to show it just for the audience.
Even some of the even more small details that I was thinking about when Nick Cage rubs his face up against the concrete wall and he's like, "What are you doing? My face itches." Like, that's you don't think of stuff like that when you watch one of these movies, but like that's
Yeah.
genius, you know.
Well, because they said they connected all the nerve endings,
Right.
like it is his face.
Yeah.
And so, he's handcuffed and he asked Tito to scratch his face.
What do you guys think of? I wrote this down because I thought it was pretty funny. The ridiculous chin comment.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think if you're gonna get two actors to play each other, at some point you are gonna make fun of their looks,
Appearance.
and so Travolta's butt chin. I mean, I think that was
Iconic.
just
It's
iconic, and
yeah.
and you got to, if you're gonna do it, just go for it. So they did.
I didn't like how Nick Cage, Troy Pollux, whatever.
Castor
Troy, yeah.
Troy.
Pollux is his brother. Anyways,
Yeah.
yes. Nick Cage's character, I don't like how they never told him that was his son. Because she tells Nick Cage when he's John Travolta that, hey, this is your son, nobody's known, I've never told you. They never tell him in that movie, so he never finds out. I think that would have been a good tension point, adding that to letting him know.
Well, I think that it was so abundantly obvious that, like, okay, so however this is going to end, whether it be Travolta stays Nicolas Cage or he actually gets his real face back, the son's going to come live with them. I think it was just, they set that up way early in the movie to be like, he lost his real son, so they're going to just adopt the bad kid so he can stop. He's not going to become Troy Castor in real life. So
right, but I wish they would have told him so that there was a tension point. Like they could have used that really well in the movie for a tension point, and I feel like they didn't. I feel like they let one loose. I know they didn't. They just didn't utilize something that was right there.
I think the only scene I really had a problem with, which I get it because Nicolas Cage is the real Troy Castor is such a sociopath, is that when Nicolas Cage as John Travolta goes to the family house and like he's like, it's like a real rapey vibe when like he's like looking at the daughter talking on the phone. I was just like, that I get it, like I get what they're doing, but they probably could have cut it out, because like I think you could have focused on the wife and like that whole dynamic, which they did primarily.
It adds to the fact that he brought it up to him earlier in the film because he's like, "How's Jamie? I bet she's ripe for the picking now."
That's true.
Yeah.
So
I was going to bring up that same thing. Like I think that's the only reason that it's okay that it's in there later on in the movie.
And I get now that there's this whole dynamic that probably would make it seem real. I mean,
awkward.
It should have been real weird and awkward, but I think the context behind why he did it, like you said, Johnny, makes it okay for that situation. Mm-hmm. Because as an audience, we know that it's not really her dad. You know what I mean?
But I think that's also like perfect writing when it comes to we have to make Castor Troy is a scumbag. He's a terrorist. He will do whatever he can. No telling how old that girl was when he was in the priest outfit when he grabbed her ass. No telling how old she was.
Yeah.
So when he's sitting there before he gets captured saying if she's ripe for the picking, you obviously I mean if this was a really hard R movie, I think he tries to do something to her.
Yeah. And let's, as soon as he turns into Archer, the first thing he tells Archer is, I'm going home to your wife. Like that's the first thing he lets known is like he's wearing the wedding ring. He tells him like, I'm going home to your very lonely wife.
Which that's a really really, really good scene when they've officially swapped bodies and John Travolta as Castor as John Travolta comes in, and it's just almost like a psychological warfare game of like, Archer is just so like shocked, and Nicolas Cage's body is just like, no, you're supposed to be dead. You didn't even have a face last time I saw you. So like, how is this even possible?
Did you guys get any horror movie vibes whenever Nicolas Cage wakes up and he has no face and he's got the cigarette in his mouth
Smoking
though.
a cigarette.
And he's listening to like the horror or the classical music, and he's just applauding the work of art. What do you guys think of that?
I think it was good. No, I think they
Yeah.
added it. It was for this time period, it worked. Maybe in today's day and age, they might try to take it the extra mile and make it super gory if they're going with the hard R. I think the way that they only show the back part of his head and really only show it in the reflection, it takes away from how gruesome it really would have been, but it still gives you the visualization that he is walking around without a face.
Yeah.
Over the Rainbow apartment sequence
shootout.
The shootout. What'd you guys think of that?
Like I said, I think that a lot of the action in this is it's very, like I said, it's very Michael Bay over the top, but it's just like, okay, it's a 90s action movie. I wouldn't expect anything less from it. And so it's just like, when they're coming through the windows or coming from the skylight roof glass sequence, it's just, they're coming from all different directions. And something we didn't talk about, but the box that Troy Caster has of like the
guns,
the weed, the guns, the Mentos and everything, I thought was a kind of a cool little character driven moment. But when Archer grabs the golden guns and starts shooting left and right, and he's actually, one thing I do like is that Nicolas Cage does a very good job of emulating the sympathy that Archer has. And so during that whole entire shootout, he's not worried about the girl. He's just worried about trying to keep the boy safe. And so I thought that was actually a good character moment in that sequence.
Yeah,
I didn't like when the brother and sister were leaving each other, and he kissed the sister like that was his wife or his girl, and I'm like,
because you didn't know anything up to that point. You're just like they're brother and sister, and then they did it, and you're like, sweet home. No, when the kid goes on like that little dance floor podium, and they're all shooting around him, and he's just like sitting there listening to that music. I'm like, if you would have died, kid, I felt no sympathy because you had everywhere to hide and you chose to go on a glass dance floor and just chill.
When I first saw this movie, I thought that kid was going to die. And I was like, oh, dang, Nicolas Cage or John Travolta's character has to go through another kid shooting.
Yeah.
Because he's trying to protect him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I did like when it's just them two and they're back to back on that mirror, and he's like, we just have to shoot he either says shoot ourselves or shoot each other, and they're looking in the mirror, and it's basically like they're shooting the other person because they're in that body, they're looking in the mirror, it's the person that they have been spending 6 years trying to either get away from or kill or capture. And so I thought that was very unique in the way that they use that artistic viewing.
Yeah.
As far as like, I can kill you right here, even though he knows the bullet's going through the mirror to Archer and Troy on the other side. Yeah. They're still technically shooting the person that they're fighting in the mirror. I thought that was just a really cool scene.
That was I agree with you, Craig. That was a very good visual representation of basically the entire situation at hand. Yeah. It's like, I can shoot you, but like you are me and I'm you, and either way it goes, we're going to kill each other at this point.
I enjoyed the funeral ending setup, the big gun and boats at the end.
I feel like that
was too much.
I feel like the very ending was a little too much. I did enjoy the boat scene because, like I said, those stuntmen that were doing all that stuff, like props to them because they legit collided those boats going like 50, 60. And they're hanging off the edge and feet on the water, skiing on the water with just shoes. Like you said, very Michael Bay-ish, but yeah, props to the stuntmen in this movie.
And it's a weird detail to have, but like the spear gun to take out John Travolta's Nicolas Cage is kind of like, yeah, okay, that's like the perfect icing on that whole entire sequence. It's like, yeah, I would believe that.
I before you go there, I just want to say I like the concept of John Travolta know he's about, or the real Castor Troy knows he's about to die, and he starts fucking up John Travolta's face. I did like that part.
Yeah, he's like, you're gonna either see me or you're gonna know it was me for the rest of your life or whatever. Yeah, that was. Yeah.
Do you guys think that John Travolta should have stayed Nicolas Cage? Because by that point in the movie, his wife has kind of figured it out. I mean, well, she's figured out like the blood type and like the little clues that he's given her,
which was another good detail.
Yeah, I don't know. There's just a part of me that thinks that it just would have been a better, clean ending if he couldn't get his like real face back. If he had to stay, if John Travolta had to stay Nicolas Cage in that situation.
See, I'm the opposite. I think it would have been a bittersweet ending, and it wouldn't have felt like a real true ending if that happened.
Yeah, because it's almost like
John Travolta would have won.
Yeah, he would have been able to sit there and haunt Archer for the rest of his life. Mm-hmm. Just simply by letting him live in his body.
But that's I think that's kind of like a beautiful tragedy of you've spent your last 6 years chasing this guy, and now you have to live him the rest of your life. John Travolta has to live as Nicolas Cage the rest of his life because of just this obsession he's had with him and trying to catch him.
That's sick, Zach. I like that. I like that ending. That sounds very A24-ish.
Yeah, that is.
Yeah.
Hey, honestly, you better patent that because you could technically make a movie around this idea with that ending. And,
you know, I did see that there was always plot details for a Face Off 2, but it never went into fruition.
Face Off.
Perfect.
Yeah.
I thought that was really cliche. Like he's like face.
See. But I think that was like the Cage scene of the whole movie. Yeah. I was just like, I'm going to take his eyes. I'm going to take his nose. Just like naming off all the face parts. It's just like, yeah, okay. That's like the caginess of it.
So if 218 felt a little too long for you guys, how much, is there a scene that you could probably live without? And how much runtime would you take away?
It felt long, but I don't think I was ever like
bored.
I think the ending boat scene could have been cut down a little bit. I think you had enough story and conflict and action between Travolta and Cage up to that point.
Ended at the funeral.
Yeah, you could have had something end at the funeral. Yeah. But the whole boat chase scene, I'd like another 15-20 onto it. Other than that, I wish they would have taken that 15-20 and added it to the brother with Archer as Cage in the prison. And kind of added to that detail in there.
I would say I think the movie kind of slowed down, just in my opinion, when Travolta as Cage got to the apartment and he just kind of like was looking at like their hideout and everything. It was just like, I get what they're doing, and obviously it sets up that whole entire action sequence. It's just I think we could have just like cut this down just a little bit. This would you say this is 218? I think you could have easily made this like a tight 2-hour movie. I think it would have been. I think it would have been good.
And then I noticed the 2 small cameos in this movie. Danny Masterson was the boyfriend. Yeah. And then did you guys see Thomas Jane in the prison?
Yeah. Yeah.
He was the guy with.
Was he the crazy dude with the glasses?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. The old Punisher himself.
Ironically.
So, but yeah, guys, let's get into. I think we had a fun conversation here about Face Off. What would you guys probably say if you had a favorite scene? I'll go first.
I'd say that.
If you guys are still thinking, I had mine written down already. The apartment shootout sequence, the beginning plane scene where Nick Cage just talks about peaches, sucks a little tongue. I thought that was a pretty fun scene, and then the capture which is the plane scene, and then the bomb where Travolta disassembles the bomb and he's like an American hero.
Yeah. He almost didn't get it though.
Yeah.
Like, could you imagine 30 minutes in, bomb doesn't defuse, face off.
Oops. Yeah.
Literally blew his face off. Yeah.
What do I use, Zach?
I'm going to say the airplane tarmac chase, the actual Archer versus Caster hangar fight, where they're just kind of going through all the equipment and stuff. And then it's grotesque, but I mean, when Caster wakes up and he has no face, and it's just like the reflection of the sunglasses, and he's just smoking the cigarette. It's just like, give me a face, his face. It's like, okay, yeah, that makes sense.
Craig?
The mirror scene I was talking about, when it's just them two, and then Archer as Cage is in the prison. He's like, you have a visitor, and you're sitting there thinking that it's Tito just pulling him out already because something went wrong. Ends up being Cage as Archer, and you're just like, so this is what we're doing here. Like you just know at that moment, like, he's screwed, because there is no, you're like, okay, maybe there's still a way, but it shows that he killed everybody. I think that really just, like, that sets the tempo of the movie right then and there. That's where everything kind of ties itself together from the first 30-ish minutes. And then you're full blown from there on out.
Yeah.
Full blown face off. Star rating 1 out of 10. If you guys have not joined us for any episodes, if this is your first episode, 1 being absolute power of the dog shit, 10 probably being Top Gun Maverick. Star rating for Face Off, I'm gonna give this movie an 8. Even after watching it all these years later, it still holds up to me. It's funny. It's action packed. It's Nick Cage, John Travolta. It's Face Off.
Yeah.
Zach?
I'm going to go just a little lower. I'm going to give it a 7. I enjoy this fever dream of a movie. I think I would. But like Craig said, it works. You don't question it. It's something that it's definitely of its time. And I appreciate, getting a chance to see it, because otherwise I don't think I would ever really watch it if it wasn't for this podcast. Nicolas Cage. I think you're totally right, Johnny. I think John Travolta was a star, but Nicolas Cage came out being the bigger star out of this, and so
that's big to say, because Nick Cage won an Oscar before this.
Yeah, right before this. Yep. So I'm going to give it a 7.
I'm with you, Johnny. I'm going to give it an 8. Literally only knew the opening scene from this movie, and I was just like, it's Nick Cage, it's John Travolta. I didn't even honestly know John Travolta was in it for the longest time, and then, like, I started watching it and I was like, God, this movie's going to suck. Like, Johnny just showed me this because of the beginning. And I honestly really enjoy it. I think I'm going to watch this more times down the road. Like, I don't think this is just a one and done for me.
And it's
out of the two of us, Johnny, who do you think was going to hate it more, me or Craig?
I thought Craig was going to, or I thought Zach was going to give this like a fucking 4. I thought Zach was going to hate this movie.
I mean, it has its nitpicks. It has its moments where it's aged. But overall, like I said, I had a fun time watching it.
Do you guys think you would have enjoyed this before or after watching The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent?
I enjoyed it more, actually.
I think adding that movie to him kind of explaining everything, it helped.
I didn't know where to place which movie begin, in the middle or right before the end of the month, and I was like, I think I'm going to do Unbearable Weight first and then Face Off, so maybe they can get the.
Because I think Unbearable Weight kind of explains like the aura, the mystique that is Nick Cage. Mm-hmm. And if you were to go in thinking, oh, this guy Nick Cage is just some crazy dude who's trying to be some top of the line actor, obviously I've seen more Nick Cage stuff than just like National Treasure and whatnot. Right. But for the average person, if you were to just give them these two movies and you did Face Off first and then Unbearable Weight, I think their ratings would be significantly lower for both. Mm-hmm. But by swapping them, I think it raises them both.
Yeah.
So if you guys,
go ahead. I wasn't on Unbearable Weight, but rewatching that movie, I agree with you, Craig. It really does explain just like the summary and the essence of what Cage is and as an actor and everything. And it is a little. There are some moments in it. I mean, the Paddington 2 joke just cracks me up every single time, but it's just it's a good movie that I agree with you, Johnny. I'm glad we did. Well, I'm glad we saw Unbearable Weight first and then did Face Off because it makes a lot more sense in retrospect.
Yeah. So go check it out if you guys have not seen Face Off yet. It's 25 years old. It's on Paramount Plus, I believe. Or you can, I own this perfect film on a hard copy. So go check it out. Next week, I don't know why. I just was looking at some Leo movies and I'm like, I want to talk Leo again. Hopefully the guys will understand and the guys won't mind it. But next week we're talking Leonardo DiCaprio again. We're talking Blood Diamond. May the 1st. We kind of got an extra week in May, so I was like, let's just do a Leo movie. Let's see what happens. I haven't seen Blood Diamond since check this out. Since its initial theater run in 2006.
Wow.
That's the last time I've seen Blood Diamond. I own it. I've never watched the Blu-ray. So I think it's gonna be pretty interesting.
I mean, you want to talk about? It's hard to believe this movie, Blood Diamond, is close to 17 years old. Just to start with that. But when this movie came out, I mean, it was all the rave. Everybody was talking about it. It was up for pretty much every award that I can remember.
And it was one of those movies that not only was big during award season, but it was popular. Everybody had to go see it.
Yeah. Well, and this is the year, we'll talk about it next week, but this is the same year that Leo did Blood Diamond and The Departed, and it was kind of up in the air. What was he going to get nominated for?
So, and we'll talk more about that next week. I don't think we'll have a top 5 next week. I think we're just going to come straight in and talk all about Blood Diamond. It's probably going to get it's worth the whole hour's conversation. So next week we're gonna talk Blood Diamond, May the 1st. So I'm excited.
HBO Max it up.
Yeah, and it's on HBO Max.
Any mailbag this week?
No mailbag this week. We probably will save some time for mailbag next week, depending on how long Blood Diamond runs. But man, May is packed. We got Blood Diamond, Guardians of the Galaxy 3, Passion of the Christ, Sicario, and then All Quiet on the Western Front.
I think it's pronounced Cesario. Am I remembering that wrong or right?
Cesario.
Maybe
Cesaro.
I'm just
Cesaro.
Did you and Ed? You and Ed did Day of the Soldado, right? What, like,
we did.
With the way in the back. Okay.
Yeah. Year 1, it won a poll. Sicario 2. So yeah, why not talk about the first one, which I think is a far superior film than the second one.
Yeah.
So next week, Blood Diamond next week, guys. Any final thoughts on Face Off before we head out of here?
If you've never seen Face Off, just go watch it. Just experience the Cage Travolta 90s nostalgia. That's all. That's enough said.
Yeah. Cage, one-liners. It's worth it. Go check it out. Paramount Plus. Craig?
Yeah. It was a good conversation. A movie that exceeded my expectations, in all honesty. So,
Craig, have you seen the 60 Minutes episode, 60 Minutes interview yet? That I sent?
No, I didn't. Who's it about?
Nicolas Cage. He was on 60 Minutes last night.
Oh, last night.
Yeah.
It's in the link in the thread. Go check it out. Face Off. We'll see everybody and talk to everybody next week for a new episode. As always, every Monday, 5:30 p.m. here on Emaswap Productions. Or you can listen to the audio version every Monday night, 6 p.m., wherever you listen to podcasts. Blood Diamond next week right here on the Cine-Men Movie Podcast.
Later.
Bye.